All right, welcome back to Statement Games Live. This is we're recording on April 25th, and my name is Nathan, and I'm here with Mark, CEO of Statement Games. What's going on, Mark?
What's going on, man? Doing all
Not
right.
much, not much. Yep.
Interesting week, but yeah, a lot going on. Trying to stay sane, keeping things afloat. Bunch of balls up in the air, getting a couple in the drop. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. So for everyone out there, maybe new to the show, this is kind of our conversation behind the scenes of what's going on with Statement Games as a business, as a platform, all that kind of stuff. I rattle off a few questions to Mark. He gives us the insight, and everyone out there watching is a little more informed about what's going on at Statement Games. So let's start off with last week. You didn't really announce that the website fixes had been finished. You said that you were going to wait and
Correct.
kind of monitor how that went. Have they been completed? How's it looking? What's going on with the site?
Yeah. So basically, you're right. I haven't made any official kind of announcements yet. It's not like I'm intentionally trying to keep people in the dark, but things actually have been fixed. It seems like we're pretty kind of stable for a remainder of the week, or for pretty much all of last. Well, actually, we didn't have any outages at all like last week, so our support team is kind of on it. Um, from a user perspective, everything is actually fixed.
Oh, nice.
However, with that actually said here, there is a pretty intense architecture project that was actually started on Monday of last week. It's probably going to take about another, I'd say, 2.5 to 3 weeks to complete. So a total of, let's just call it 4 to 5 weeks here, and where you've just gotten through week number one.
Mhm.
There's more of just long term stability elements that are being put in place and built to ensure that the fix is not necessarily something that's going to actually get us through a month or 2 months here. It's going to be consistent. So
Mhm.
the answer is yes and no. And where that from a user perspective here, they're not going to actually see any more outages, even with the additional fixes and development efforts that we progress with over the course of the next month. Um, but there's still some things that need to be done behind the scenes to make sure long term stability is fulfilled.
Sure, absolutely. So you're
If that
talking about
makes
an
sense.
yeah, you're talking about a new development project, and so you've actually launched a couple development projects in the last, what would you
There'll be
say,
more. Yeah,
couple
there
months?
will.
Yeah.
We're kind of fully locked and loaded in kind of development mode.
Hmm.
So there'll probably I'll actually start like a another project tomorrow.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I'm not going to announce anything as of yet. I think we have like enough on our plate here. Again, it's not really. Well, actually, what the hell with it? I'll kind of talk about it. It's just
Go for it.
more. It's more about just bringing some of the marketing tools that we use from third parties, such as we use SendGrid for email. There's another
Hmm.
system called CleverTap that we use for kind of like, let's just say, like in-app messaging and web
Hmm.
push like notifications. But if you think about it from a marketing perspective, it's like we have the Statement Games admin tool. Then potentially we're exiting out of that system and going to other dashboards and things like that to manage those marketing campaigns or processes. So the project that I'm actually starting is just more of one in which we're bringing those environments into one centralized Statement Games admin umbrella, so that
Gotcha.
everything is neatly organized and reported on from, I guess, our uh, admin, or dashboard
Hmm.
perspective here. And of course, that really ties in nicely with the white label story that we're telling. And I'm sure we'll get into more of that either in the course of this show or more in the weeks here. Because hey, look, we can't necessarily ask somebody like the PGA Tour to, all right, you know what, we got all this data, we can execute on a marketing campaign here, but now you have to go do something else here. All these people
Hmm.
are going to want to see all this stuff neatly organized within one environment, and that's kind of like what we're doing, which is just more of bringing these tools and these partnerships into a centralized, unified environment, as opposed to having the tactics scattered across multiple environments.
Absolutely. All right. Well, so like you were said, you had the architecture fix. Now you've got this development coming up. Another was about NBA info. And you said you wanted to go into this in a little bit of detail. What was this? What is this project?
Well, it's actually kind of like one of the challenges that we actually had. I don't think it was last week, but one of the weeks kind of like before that when we kind of came back with Statement Games Live, or maybe we actually even talked about this on a Making Picks episode. I'm not actually sure of what it was, but I had started a project towards the tail end of February, which was more around the automation of NBA games. Basically, we have a
Okay.
great partner in Sports Radar, and where we're getting a ton of kind of NBA kind of data. And the whole goal was to just develop some more robust systems and processes that gave us the ability to power more NBA games on the Statement Games platform, and then also have the scoring of those games take place in real time. So instead of players of the game kind of waiting anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes, sometimes depending on the day, it can actually be longer, depending on the resources that we have access to. This would be a less of a manual process. It would be all kind of automated. It would give us the ability to run more content, which is kind of great. It's one of the things that people constantly ask me about here and where. Hey, you know what? I like watching prime time. Game of the week NBA events here, but I'm a Knicks fan or a Bulls fan or a Lakers fan. I want the ability to play my favorite teams kind of games
Mhm.
for every freaking game that they kind of make available. So that kind of project addresses that challenge, and we were kind of getting close, and it was something that I've actually struggled with in the past couple of weeks. Um, I'll just kind of lay it out there, and
Yeah.
hey, look, I think we've always kind of agreed that we want to be as transparent as we possibly can, kind of on this show. But if I take a step back and I take a look at what the overall strategy of the business kind of is, we have a main development team, and this development team has kind of been with us from day one, and they're great. I would highly
Mhm.
recommend Intellect Faces to anybody. I actually think that I put you in contact with them with
Yep.
something that you were looking to do kind of with IDP guys here. But as much as I kind of like those guys and it kind of make sense, I made a conscious decision, kind of with my partner, to basically explore a new development company, give them kind of a project, just because it just makes business practical sense here. Where I didn't want to have all of my development eggs in one basket. I
Right.
also didn't want to necessarily kind of overwhelm them with new projects when there's plenty of stuff that I can kind of get them kind of working on. And in
Mhm.
working with these guys for a number of different years, now you just understand what their strengths and what their weaknesses kind of are. So the I guess newer company by the name of Kiwi Tech,
Mhm.
great kind of people, had actually done other projects in the past in which a sports radar integration was done with other clients that were actually working with them. So I kind of tasked this NBA project um,
Okay.
for them, not necessarily my kind of core guys. So obviously they had to become adequated with our technology, our system, and do a little bit of a learning process of what Statement Games is before you can actually write a line of code. I mean, you kind of know this. Any
Yep.
developer that you speak with here, they're always going to want to start a project from scratch. They don't necessarily want to tamper with or try and really kind of learn somebody else's code. But when you're
Mhm.
like, hey, look, it's tough noogies. It's either you want the project or
Right.
you're not. I'm not necessarily going to recreate the whole freaking system here just because you want to start the project from scratch. So things were kind of moving along, and we were kind of you know doing well, making progress with the development of the project. I was told by my project manager that the project was close to kind of being completed. I said, great, that's fantastic. Let's get on a call with these guys so that I can actually see a demo of what they've actually done. So in that process, I got on a demo call, and look, from a NBA perspective, or from any kind of gaming kind of perspective we have on statement games here, we're kind of running anywhere between, let's just call it 50 to 60 statements that are associated with a sporting event.
Mhm.
It's never gonna. I mean, it might kind of fluctuate by one or two kind of picks or not. But in an effort to shorten this story up, the demo they were showing me was one in which they were powering close to 340 statements with an individual sporting event.
Yeah.
So right away, I'm like, guys, I'm a little confused. Like, I understand that, this is something that can kind of be, fixed or whatever, but I'm not looking to give end users a choice of picking, 364. That's a little kind of like, excessive.
Hmm.
And when you take a look at the project spec and my requirements, I've mapped out what the 64 NBA statements would actually be, what the
Okay.
formulas are
Hmm.
that as to how we're coming up with each specific statement. This is where we get the data to populate those variables into the formulas from sports radar. What is kind of like the problem here?
Yep.
So there were things like that, and then also in the process of coming back here, they kind of like came back to me and kind of like said, look, you know what, this is a little bit of a change request. So I was like, I don't understand kind of like a change request. This is part of the original spec.
Right.
So we actually had to get some of the higher level executives at Kiwi Tech like involved, and we hashed it out. We had very cordial civil kind of conversations. Um, and we agreed that what we were kind of asking for was not outside of the original project scope,
Right.
and that they agreed to let's button this thing up. I mean, we're close to kind of being done, and we'll give kind of like a new demo, and hopefully everything will be straightened out. We push it into there. Well, that was 3 weeks ago,
Mm.
and communication with these guys have basically gone dark
Oh
since
no.
since that time.
Okay.
So it is a challenge. I think, a little bit more calmer now in speaking on this show than if you would have
Yeah.
spoken with me on a couple of other days this past week. You would have definitely noticed that my tone would have been like a little bit different, but I'm pissed.
Hmm.
I think I actually have kind of like a right to be pissed. Now, we've had new dialogue and conversation from Kiwi Tech recently, and the CEO of the organization sent a note back to my kind of partner saying, "Hey, look, you know what? They're an offshore development team. The team was initially moved on to a different project until these change requests kind of issues can be sorted out." Which I immediately replied, "What change requests are we talking about? We just straightened this thing out 3 weeks
Hmm.
ago. Here's your note. Here's where I'm under the. This is why I'm under the impression that we're moving on for this stuff over here." And then they kind of came back and said that, hey, you know what, COVID has actually been running through the team and all that other stuff, and they're a little kind of shorthanded at the time being, which I feel is complete fucking bullshit. To be
Hmm.
honest with you, I mean, I understand that COVID is an issue,
Yeah.
and I would never dismiss or just kind of discount it. But if you take a look at the lines of communication that we've had with these guys since the project inception, it's been it's been fairly consistent. I mean, crap. We've actually set up between our two organizations like a dedicated Slack environment between
Okay.
myself and my partner, um, which communication is actually fairly open. There's a project manager kind of on it.
Hmm.
There's been communication with them pretty much like daily. If COVID was an issue, all you had to do was drop a line in Slack or send kind of like an email saying, "Hey, look, you know what? There's some health concerns kind of like with the team here, and I kind of get it." But when
Right.
you're talking about change requests and this kind of like issues, and then also as part of like that dialogue, the CEO of the organization is saying, "Hey, you know what? Can you go ahead and pay me the remainder of the balance as a
Mm.
show of good faith for us going ahead and finishing the project?" And politely, I returned that there's not a fucking chance in hell that I'm doing that, because I'm kind of
Right.
like starting to lose, confidence that you actually have the ability to complete what we've agreed upon in the first place. So, I mean, look, you
Right.
want a snapshot of my bank account? I have the funds. I'm ready to wire the funds here. But until I can actually see that you're delivering on what has been outlined, um, and I can actually see it working within at least a QA environment, like,
Hmm.
I'm not doing anything. So that's kind of like the friction. I'm not saying that this relationship can't be repaired, but I'm concerned. I'm very much concerned, and I had a deliverable. Probably like around, I mean, it's past, but it was probably like around like the 15th of April. and where I was
Okay.
trying to get this NBA thing launched so that I would actually have like a good 2.5 months to test this thing out in a live environment, which would be StatementGames.com,
Hmm.
with the NBA, and then I had full intentions of, moving on to another sport. I was leaning a little bit more towards kind of like baseball, but at this point here, I think I'm going to have to do what I'm continue doing what I'm doing from a baseball perspective for the remainder of this year, and just start getting prepared for football, since
Yeah.
that's going to be upon us, faster than or a lot quicker than anybody kind of realizes. But I would say that that's kind of like the main challenge that I actually have right now. So I'm pissed off at the development company. I think there's deeper conversations that I need to have with the people who are running this project,
Yeah.
because it's just not working,
Right.
and it's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the next move on this? Like, I would assume, is there a possibility that they get it finished? Obviously, you're hoping for that. But if they can't, can you move it over to your main development company, still get on track and have something to
Yes,
launch?
as a preamp, I've had a conversation with my main kind of developer. I kind of asked him, not to actually touch anything or do anything, but as a starting point, would he be willing to at least dive into our QA environment and take a look at what has actually been created?
Hmm.
And then if this thing really goes kind of south, does he have the ability to kind of pick this thing kind of up? Um, but look, this is why, as a startup and things like that, here you never pay more than 35% for a project. I understand that you need something to kind of get something kind of
Yeah.
started here, but this is why we go through planning processes and things like that. And it's just kind of a disturbing process. So one, he's looking at it, and two, I was promised by the CEO of Kiwi Tech that we would actually have a plan on how to get this back on track
Hmm.
tomorrow. But at this
Okay.
point, let's just say I'm not necessarily holding my breath.
Yeah. So I would assume that you're probably
We'll
not moving
continue the
forward
story
with these
next week.
guys.
When on the next kind of version. I mean,
Right,
we'll
right.
see how this whole thing plays out. So it's a little bit of a TBD.
So
Um,
they complete this. Do you go back to the well, or do you
I'm
stay
not
with your
sure.
guy? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't want to answer that right now.
No problem. Okay, so let's move forward here. You've had an additional week since hype. Do you have any updates on, cool, like, have you talked to Sinclair? Have you talked to, some of these guys that you were waiting to get projects in, and what's the updates?
With the majority of the guys, we're still kind of in the uh, call scheduling kind of process.
Hmm.
Um, with that said, here I feel pretty good about it. I did submit my first what do you want to call it, wireframe,
Hmm.
proposed end user flow for the PGA. We did that on Wednesday of last week.
Nice.
So nothing urgent or immediate feedback wise from them. So it's one of those things, and we're okay. You know what? First couple of days here, I guess no. It's not a bad sign that there's no
Yeah.
feedback to coming back here, but I'll start kind of like the follow up process. I don't know, tomorrow or Tuesday, things like that, just from a perspective of, hey, you know what, we did it. We sent over the outline. Did you
Yeah.
get it? Just want to get confirmation that it's actually been received. And
Hmm.
of course, if it has been received, have you had a chance to take a look at it? And are there any immediate comments, questions, concerns? And is there an opportunity to kind of like set up another let's call it whiteboarding session later on
Yeah.
this week to review? Because there was a proposal, there was a list of contingencies and questions that we actually had for the PGA.
Sure.
So the final kind of mock up would be provided, based on their comment. I mean, I guess the main kind of questions that we actually have for them is this trial. Do you want it supported with some of your, tournament or title clinical sponsors, or not?
Hmm.
If so, basically this is how we plan to account for that. and little things like that that you just need some confirmation on before you can actually provide a
Yeah.
uh, wireframe that has the ability to be signed off on.
Absolutely. So a little bit of no news is good news in a way.
Still early, yeah. Still,
Yeah.
still early.
Cool. Good stuff. So you mentioned to me that you've been able to raise some investment capital. Um, is there any details you'd like to kind of go into on this, like who you got it from, how much, and you know what the structure is of that?
Yeah, sure. So um, I guess the main investor is me. um, I also got some help from some family members, so it's still kind of like in the I guess immediate friends and family kind of like circle, so to speak. Here,
Hmm.
I guess from a investor world perspective here, it's almost like an Uncle Tony type of scenario.
Hmm.
If you kind of catch my drift, they always say, "All right, you know what, you do like these things here, where you beg, borrow, and steal from friends and family members as much as you kind of can, and hopefully you're in a position with the company where those when those funds kind of run out, that you've got enough traction in place with like a VC or an official kind of angel investor or a family
Hmm.
office, so on and so forth. So um, the instrument that was actually kind of used is more of a loan agreement that would
Okay.
convert into equity. For those who have been following the Statement Game story, know that we actually closed an official, friends and family round out in December of 2019. So we raised about 500K in exchange for about 22% of the organization. So legally, I can't give up additional. If you take a look at the structure of the company, which we're Delaware Inc., I can't sell additional equity um, or shares of the organization. I mean, I could, but to do so, I would actually have to open up what's called like an official Series A, seed, another
Hmm.
round of funding, and notify the SEC of like what we're doing.
Gotcha.
It's something that I'm prepared to do. I just don't want to do it as of right now until I actually have a high net worth or kind of like an official angel investor that's willing
Hmm.
to kind of come to the table with I mean, look, what we actually raised recently between myself and this family member, it's a little less than 100K.
Okay.
So until I actually have somebody who would take the lead on a let's say 2 to 2.5 million seed investment here, I'm not gonna open that up.
Right. Right.
So what we actually did is, instead of incurring additional legal costs to open up the new round of funding officially, for the amount of money that kind of came with the company, I decided to structure an agreement with myself and this other kind of family member in the form of a loan
Okay.
with a small kind of interest percentage, and then at the end of, let's just call it 6 months, um, that loan would be repayable, or the investor would have the option to, I guess, convert that debt into additional shares or equity of the organization. I think in that time frame, I will actually have the ability to show and demonstrate more structure or more traction within the organization, making the company a little bit more attractive to a professional
Hmm.
angel, friends and family investor, and then open things up at that time here when I know that there's you know funds coming in where I can actually cover the. It's not going to be a
Sure.
lot, but it's still kind of significant legal costs to go through that process.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that gives you some more insight of what you go through from a corporate dev, or that's
Hmm.
why it's important when you do a startup here. In my opinion, if you have the intent of raising capital at some point in the future, it's important to structure the organization as an Inc, a Delaware Inc, Nevada Inc.
Okay.
Those types of structures give you the ability to sell shares. And in my opinion, I don't think any angel investor or professional investing institution will deem your entity investable if you don't actually have that type of structure in place.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. So you're raising this money, and this is kind of in. response to the success at Hype and your
Correct.
need for development, further development, and everything.
Correct. It's literally, just some capital to make sure that I have the resources cash wise in my account to deliver on some of these, opportunities that we currently have. Of
Mhm.
course, we feel that, there's great opportunities for the pilots that we're pursuing to convert into um, cash-based contracts. But
Mhm.
at this stage of the game here, the pilots that we're developing, not to say that they're going to be, 100% free, but for the most part, it's luck. You know what? This is what we want to do here. Prove that you have the ability to deliver on it, which is fair when you're dealing with the
Yeah.
PGA and the Phillies and things like that. They want to see as a startup you have the ability to deliver it before they commit to any type of, long-term
Mhm.
cash client vendor type of relationship.
Yeah, yeah. They wouldn't want you to take on a project and then
Correct.
not be able to deliver on it.
Correct.
And maybe disappear.
Correct.
So
Correct. Which, as we're starting to kind of see, is a concern on whether you're a startup or if you're, perceived to be one of the more respected startup development organization companies in the industry. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's a risk that anybody would, need to go ahead and take.
absolutely, absolutely. All right. So how has website traffic been compared to your white label interest from like Hype, the PGA, um, Sinclair, all of that stuff? Has either swayed you towards more B2B versus B2C? Is your traffic like blowing up and maybe you're seeing more value in B2C, or is all of the stuff with Hype and the accelerator programs kind of shifting your focus to B2B?
I guess it's a fair point. Let me see if I can elaborate on it a little bit more. So, in starting with overall kind of like traffic figures, traffic is down. It's
Okay.
down. It's expected. There's two kind of primary reasons for that. First and foremost, Statement Games, as of right now, is still a event driven platform.
Hmm.
So opening day has already taken place with baseball. You're still kind of just getting ready to take kind of the turn from regular season NBA and NHL games into kind of playoffs. So I guess the point that I'm making, I mean, with the exception of the spike that we saw last night from the UFC 262 event, it's not like
Hmm.
there's been an NCAA tournament or the Super Bowl or a big sporting event that's
Right.
taken place in the past couple of, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks that, well, since the end of the NCAA tournament, there's been no Super
Okay.
Bowl, there's been no playoff games, there's been
Oh yeah.
no,
Nothing.
so naturally there's like a little bit of a, not significant, but like a little bit of a drip, a little bit of a dip
Yeah.
from a traffic perspective. Also, because of all the things that's actually going on with Hype and the newer B2B development, or I guess B2B opportunities that we're coming across here, I'm still a startup. I mean, there's literally only from a content perspective, one and a half people that's helping us to create content. So I guess the point being is that we have taken a step back and deprioritized marketing of the platform,
Hmm.
which has you know we're just not bringing on as many newer members at a rate that we've kind of done so in the past. It's not to
Hmm.
say that we're ignoring it. We know how to do it. We're fairly successful at it. But with that actually said, um, our retention rates are still kind of extremely kind of high. The people who have been on board with Statement Games continue to actually play it, and I think it's one of those things that I can actually now demonstrate the show that the loyalty and the engagement from within the platform is still there, even with no new acquisition marketing plays going ahead and taking place.
Hmm.
Also, obviously, we've talked about some of the bugs and glitches and things like that that are still wrong with the Statement Games platform. Um, it's not to say I'm not talking about from a stability perspective, but we talked about things like the ability to log in through Facebook or how our referral links aren't necessarily firing on all cylinders.
Hmm.
I'm still kind of down from a Google Play Android environment. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like
Okay.
anybody new who's searching for Statement Games on the Google Play Store can find this, download our app, and play the kind of game that way. It's really just kind of Apple. So I mean, all of those things have kind of attributed to I guess acquisition efforts, which has
Mhm.
I guess decreased I guess traffic. Well, I wouldn't. It's not like the dip is extensive. It's just that the growth that we're seeing from an acquisition perspective and the page views and the traffic have grown significantly from that. So a lot of that's been by design,
Mhm.
and a lot of that has been from, hey, you know what, let's get our house in order first before we start
Yeah.
reamping the acquisition efforts, and obviously the marketing efforts towards people who haven't been on the platform, that are in the system here but maybe just haven't been with us for, I don't know, the past like 5 to 6 months, or basically since football season.
Mhm.
So with that said, I have no intentions of abandoning the B2C efforts, but I think it's fair to say that the B2B efforts have been prioritized a little bit more, higher
Yeah.
than the B2C stuff.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so, and look, in terms of long term, I guess, vision of the organization, it's still too early to say um, on whether we'll completely move on from a B2C effort, or completely abandon the B2B stuff here. But it's something that I have been thinking about. But at this time, I just don't think any decisions like that need to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. So, coming from like my website, which is very football centric, I see a ebb and flow throughout the year of, where my high traffic season is, where my really low traffic season is, and what historically what it looks like in between. Are you seeing anything that is out of the ordinary? I know that last year was kind of a anomaly considering COVID and literally
Mm,
no sporting events for what was that, like 3 months, 3 to 4 months. Outside of, I think, wrestling still had stuff going
mm.
on. Are you seeing anything that is consistent with previous years, maybe at a different scale? Like years ago, it was, 20% lower traffic, but you're still seeing the same bumps. What would be your busiest season?
The busy season is still going to be, football as a whole. Um, but in terms of it's not really a season. It's more of how big is the event.
Okay.
So I would say Super Bowl, 2 weeks leading up to that here, that's a very high traffic little season, within the season.
Okay.
Opening day, the start of football season, but it's the same thing here. It's not like football season is our peak season. Our peak season are the events, and I would say it's almost like football. I don't know, week like 8, 9, 10, that range for NFL season
Yeah.
is like really peak. It's when people start getting eliminated from their knockout pools, when their
Yep.
fantasy football team sucks. Same
Okay.
thing from a baseball perspective. It's all right. You know what? My fantasy baseball team stinks. Well, what can I do? So it's little nuances like that. I would hate to say that football season is our peak season. It's probably our most important season, but um, look, if the Steelers are playing on Monday night against the Cowboys here, that type of game, it does just as much as Game 7 of a Stanley Cup between the Blues and the Bruins.
Okay. Gotcha. That's interesting. Yeah. No, all right. Sounds good. Um, so getting a little more personal here. You just had your COVID shot today,
Mhm.
and I had mine a couple weeks ago. Um, how did it go, and what are your overall thoughts on how COVID has affected the job market?
I think it's just it's really interesting. I think I'm starting to see that with the vaccinations and with the shots. This is just my guess, or what my thesis currently is. Um, I think there's more employers that are out there that are kind of like, asking employees to come back into the office.
Hmm.
And I don't think people want to do it. I think there's a lot of people, or a significant portion of the job market out there, that want to continue working from home. And I think from a job market kind of perspective here, I don't know what it was in the past 2 weeks here. I've had more inquiries about job opportunities with Statement Games, being that we're a remote based
Hmm.
organization. And I really think that has kind of like a lot to do with it. And I actually, it's just funny. I mean, people want the work from home kind of like, opportunities, but a couple of funny conversations that I had, they still want the let's just call it city salaries. So,
Yeah.
which obviously doesn't necessarily exist with for me, or with us kind of like at this time. But I think it's just kind of like interesting. I've gotten a lot more kind of like inquiries, and I have heard stories about people who been laid off from their job because they had extensive leave during COVID season, because they actually got sick and they had to attend to a couple of different things.
Hmm.
And as a result of this layoff here, they're looking for a new remote based kind of like opportunities. I've had conversations with somebody specifically who said, "Hey, you know what? Love kind of like what you're doing. I live out on Long Island, which is not too far from where the company is
Yeah.
officially registered, or headquarters, and things like that. And I just I'd feel more comfortable for personal reasons here in taking a remote based kind of position, as opposed to getting on the train system, which is the Long Island Railroad system out by me, and getting back into the city on more of a consistent basis." So
Hmm.
I think there's more conversations and inquiries that I've had that are along those lines, more so in the past 2.5 weeks, that I have had in the past 6 months. And I think the reason from it is that employers are feeling more comfortable in bringing people back into offices with the vaccinations kind of like rolling out, and trying to get back to more of a traditional work week.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So are you fielding employment offers or resumes or interests, I guess? And
I always it's it's a little bit of I mean, look, this is kind of like as long as it's kind of like within reason and I have time, I try and take as many calls and conversations that I possibly have. So if somebody, it's not like we're advertising kind of positions, but if people are
yeah.
inquiring, I want to know, who these people are, what they're actually looking for, just to get a sense of what the market is dictating. What are these people actually looking for? What type of skill sets that they actually possess? And in the same
Mhm.
breath here, it gives me selfishly an opportunity to practice and rehome my pitch. This is what
Okay.
statement. I mean, as part of like that conversation, I'm giving them an overview of what the company is, and what our long-term connectional vision is, and just refining some of those points. And I think we've talked about what some of those points are, and how
Mhm.
we're working on a new investor, pitch deck, so to speak. And then
Yep.
also, selfishly speaking, it's a cheap way for me to grow the acquisition base. I mean, you'd be kind of like
All right.
surprised at how many people want to, you know, work for the organization. But when you ask them, have you actually played Statement Games and have you created an account?
Yeah.
I've watched the video. I've read blog articles. I see what you're doing, but no, I haven't gotten around to. All right, well, guess what you're doing right now, especially if you want to
Yeah.
pursue job opportunities with us. So it's little. Hey, it's one of these little things that you do as a startup to continue growing the. I mean, there's probably been a good 25 people that I picked off in the past 2 weeks here, just by having these introductory 30
Mhm.
minute calls. And I mean, a lot of these things are actually done over email as well. So
Sure.
it's not a significant amount of time, but I think it's just important to gauge a better understanding of what's out in the marketplace, who's looking for what here. And from a full-time salary-based employment perspective, I wouldn't say that we're there yet as a company, but I'm always looking for interns. So it's the same
Mhm.
kind of like job process that I take an intern through, as I
Yeah.
would taking somebody through a full-time position process.
So do you, you take these and maybe you find someone that you like. Do you keep their information on hand?
Absolutely.
in case, you get into a position where you're like, hey, I need someone, and you've got like someone to go to offer a job in case, that 2.5 million rolls in and you've got 5 projects working on, and that kind of thing.
But also, I
Ends
mean,
up
yeah,
happening.
it's the same thing, you know. I mean, you want to keep your eyes and your ears open. If somebody in the interview process said, "Hey, look, you know what? I'm looking for a business development position. I have access to the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Giants, and whatever. These are my, I don't know, my cousins work here. I can
Yeah.
feel that we can kind of like, get. I mean, look, I take that information and run back to my investors here. Look, I'm looking to bring this guy kind of like on here. This
Okay.
is his resume. This is what he's actually doing here. This is what I actually need to kind of like, pay him. And as a result of that, we're confident that we can land X, Y, and Z. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure, and again, that's my job to kind of, vet this out. So if somebody did actually say that, I'm prepared to. Look, just because you gotta know how to leverage these kind of opportunities in your
Hmm.
favor, and I think information and details like this, you know, help. So anybody's looking for a job for us over here, if you want to show off on who you know and what you know, or hey, you know what, I want to run your social media campaigns and things like that. And guess what? Here, I don't know, I got a followership base of 1.5 million people on Instagram,
Wow.
and I mean, these are some of the things that I'm kind of like looking for people to come to the table with.
Yeah.
And if the opportunity was right, trust me, I'd figure out a way to bring them on board.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's move into really quick to kind of round out this episode. What's going on with Statement Games this week as far as games? What promotions do you have going? Uh, what can users be looking forward to as far as what to do with your platform this week?
Um, I mean, we'll be doing kind of something else kind of like tomorrow, specifically around kind of like making picks. But you got the NBA, you got the NFL draft. I mean, did that not sneak up on you or what?
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
man.
that game has kind of like been running on the Statement Games platform for a couple of weeks now.
Okay.
The draft is actually 4 days away.
Hmm.
So if anybody who's listening to this show, if you want to drop a little comment, maybe give me some ideas of what you would actually like to see from Statement Games, or maybe, you know, pepper us with a couple questions that you would like some answers or resolution to as we record more of these shows. There could be some prizes that I give away, depending on what you're asking, and if we deem as a team that these questions are valuable. But on top of that, here, anyone who would actually go 10 for 10 with their picks for the upcoming NFL draft tournament, which I believe comes off the board on Thursday. Is that round one? Is round one Thursday?
It is. It is.
Round one is Thursday, so we'll have a couple again. Anyone who goes 10 for 10 with their NFL picks will come to the table with another $100, cash that can be used for any, I guess, gift card within a reward shop here. And I guess we'll get into more details about that during making picks that we'll record at some point tomorrow and drop on, I don't know, late Monday night or Tuesday.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, Yeah, there's a lot going on this week as far as leading up to the draft, and we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all the draft days. So does Statement Games usually just does a first round draft contest? Do you have
I'll have to
anything for
see
the
what
later
we're
rounds?
doing this year. We did, I think last year I think there's two separate tournaments. I think the tournament that we do, the first one is a little bit more specific to rounds one and two. And the
Okay,
second game that we publish is going to be a little bit more specific to the later rounds, or the stuff that will be shown for the majority of the weekend.
gotcha. Okay, awesome. So
Can't
for everyone out
guarantee it, but
there,
that's the tentative kind of plan. Let's
yeah,
see what the operation guys do as we get a little bit more
yeah,
deeper
get
into the
closer
week.
to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So for everyone out there watching, make sure to check out Making Picks. Should be dropping tomorrow evening, if not Tuesday morning. But I'm pretty sure that'll Mark, you'll have that ready to go soon after the show's done. We've got a ringer coming in. This time I'm bringing the guy in because I got the football staff. So
Yep.
we'll see if this helps Mark more than me. If anyone's been keeping track of making picks. I caught hot fire after Mark opened his mouth at the beginning of the year. So definitely keep tabs on that. Hopefully you got some great information about the background of Statement Games going on right now through this episode of Statement Games Live. Make sure you follow on all social medias at Statement Games. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, StatementGames Inc., as well as play Statement Games on the website, as well as the mobile apps. Mark, it was a great episode, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for making picks.
Catch you tomorrow.